Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first edition of the Experience Lab. We're so excited that you were able to join us today. I am Trisha Houston. I will be one of your co-hosts today. I am the Vice President of our Discovery and Design team here at KS&R. You'll be learning a bit more about what we do at our team here today, focused on experiences, UX, innovation, all sorts of things. Very hands-on and interactive. So my co-host today, Brian, I will let you introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Brian St. Onge. I'm a director on our discovery and design team, and I've been with KS&R for about 18 years.
Excellent. All right. So let's get started. Our agenda for today, we are focused on kind of experience design 101. I'm going to take us through a few fundamental principles and mindsets that form the foundation of experience design. Then Brian is going to take us through an activity. We'll do it both as a group, or you can also do that on your own. And at the end, we have a leave behind. So hopefully what you learned today and we do as an activity, you can take back to your teams and put into action whenever you're ready. So hopefully we have some folks here who might know each other who don't. We do have the chat open. If you'd like to introduce yourself, we'd love to know where you're joining us from. Drop in your location or your LinkedIn link. We'd be happy to connect with you all. All right, let's get started. So what's better to start a presentation with than a quote that everyone knows, right? So you start with the easy stuff. But it's really true when it comes to experience design. So this whole adage of people will forget what you say, forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel is a big part of why experience design matters in business. With one addition, they also will remember how long it took. So those two dimensions, emotion and time, are the key theme that we're going to be talking through today that form the basis of experience design. As I mentioned, we'll go through mindset, also how that applies to research, because here at KS&R, we are the discovery and design team, but KS&R is a custom research shop. We do all full service types of research. So our team has qualitative folks, quantitative folks, both at tackling these experience design and CX problems. And then also activation. So that'll be our exercise that we mentioned. So what's all this fuss about experience? Let's rewind and start back at the beginning. It's not a new idea. The idea actually hit the business world well ahead of its time from a kind of foundational article called Welcome to the Experience Economy by Joseph Pine and James Gilmore. They are still consulting today. They have a group called Strategic Horizons, still publishing books. But their theory, their value model essentially is here, the progression of economic value. So they proposed back in 1998 that the way that businesses can actually make more money is to move along this progression of economic value. So I'm going to tell us a story to kind of bring this to life, one that I like to share and is an easy way for you to also share this within your organization. I also encourage you to go Google this article. It's free. I know it says $8.95 here to buy copies, but that's all, you can still view it for free on the Harvard Business Review website. So coffee is a classic example of how you're able to make more money as you move along the scale of economic value. So these are raw coffee beans. They're green. They have not been roasted. They sell, in large quantities, either by the ton or by the pound. While they're more expensive today than they were about 4 or 5 years ago, it's about $5 a pound versus 72 cents. It's a lot cheaper than what we're going to talk through as we continue to make more money or provide more value with coffee. So I don't know about you, but in my household, we brew a pot a day. pretty much. And this bag of coffee, this is a pound. Give or take, it depends on where we buy it, but maybe we're paying $11, $12, for 1 pound of coffee that's roasted and ready to go. So we've moved from commodity to a good, and we're making more money. The next level in the model of economic value is a service. Starbucks or wherever you choose to go, they'll brew the coffee for you, and you're paying by the cup. Somewhere, $4 up to $8, depending upon what sort of customization you want or what type that you want. So again, the amount of coffee keeps getting smaller, the price keeps getting higher. So we go from services to the last level in the original model of Pine and Gilmore to experiences. So if you're not familiar with this, it's something to seek out during your travels, but this is the Starbucks Reserve Roasteries. They have them in cities around the world. Of course, there's one in Seattle, so this is different from like the original store. But they have them in New York, Chicago, Tokyo, I think it's in Milan in Italy, but just different places around the world. You go there, they offer things that they don't at normal Starbucks. They have a bar. You can get a fresh cold brew espresso martini. You can have a skillet with eggs that I watched the person when I was at one in Seattle fresh crack those eggs and then cook them for me in a cast iron oven and serve it with fresh baked bread from a local bakery. Very different from your regular Starbucks. And I didn't worry about how much I was going to pay at this location. So again, we're going from paying for something where it's really price sensitive up to here where I'm just like, I'm going for the experience. It is what it is from a cost perspective. This is the way we apply this to business. So when we're talking to our clients about the experience economy, it's very theoretical, right? It sounds very business school. Obviously it is. It came, it was published from HBR. But if you think about it as a continuum, because I would argue nowadays, most businesses, even if you're a CPG company, there's some level of service that you're providing either to your customers or also to your consumers. But if we're in actual consumer services businesses or anything like that, restaurant, retail, finance, even consulting, right? This applies to both B2B and B2C. Your business operates somewhere along the continuum of providing a service or an experience. Neither is right or wrong, but it is a choice. And a choice that helps guide your strategy and your actual business activity decisions that you choose to put into your process. And so Brian's activity is going to help us kind of think through a lot of that. Here's the classic example to show neither right nor wrong, just different. Dunkin' leads towards the service side of things. This is their mission statement or purpose statement, I forget which, from their website. It's different now since they, are now part of Inspire Brands, but this was from a case study back in 2013. This is what it was at that time. So make and serve the freshest, most delicious coffee and donuts quickly, courteously, in well-merchandised stores, right? So that's a service, that's efficient. You're getting in and out. That's where they focus. So they probably might not make a reserve roastery for Dunkin' because it's not really part of their DNA. Whereas Starbucks, we're inspiring and nurturing the human spirit. One person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. It's been really interesting to watch Starbucks over the past year with Brian Nichols taking over as CEO and really taking the brand back in this direction. Because I would argue, and there's been a lot of ink spilt about how Starbucks actually shifted back towards the service focus on value during the pandemic when the app was the focus, more order volume versus the actual coffee house feel. So that's the mindset and the way to think about experience design and how it affects your business strategy. So what does that mean for research? It really means that you got to think about it with a new lens. Sorry, that clicked one too fast. So experience research requires a new lens. It is what we consider a distinct discipline, but not a new methodology. So I mentioned a couple of things earlier, surveys, focus groups, observations, IDIs, secondary research, all of those things apply when you think about experience research when applied to the business problem at hand. It's more about how you might design or implement those tried and true research techniques. So let's go through two key differences um, of how experience research actually looks different before we go into our activity. So our two differences, one, two guiding principles, don't start by measuring the positives. And then I'll tell you a story about not making more grayscale SUVs. So when we think about the positives, myself as a researcher and talking to other researchers, my background includes both experiential marketing and I guess you could say classic market research, brand trackers, per conjoints and things like that, where we're focused a lot, especially on say like satisfaction surveys. We're looking for the good, right? We're like, how much do people like things? What wins? What's doing well? What are people going to choose? So there's a lot of focus on the positives, which has its place, absolutely. But when you're doing experience design and we're talking about time and emotion, time well saved, service, time well spent, experience is very hard to pinpoint. Because if you think about it, when it all goes well, you're kind of not paying attention. So it's hard to get better. It's hard to move the business forward if you're only patting yourselves on the back for those good interactions and not necessarily thinking about what we call the gaps. So the experience gaps. So customers, when they're investing their money, they're also investing their time and their emotions. So let's pay attention to where that isn't landing and where we're creating a gap for that customer. So that's not in the high CSAT scores. That's not in the winning concept or the winning innovation. This is the smaller things that might get lost. And oftentimes, you know, it's just the reality of business. They're not necessarily intentional. Um, this is a classic example that I share. I think we've all know, no shade to anyone who might work at one of our QSRs because this applies across any kind of restaurant. But the reality is, on the left, you've got an ad made by a marketing department who is doing the best job as a marketer and, potentially trying to, win a creativity award and do all sorts of things. And then on the right, you have execution by a frontline field team who is only trained as well as that corporate office provides them, only trained as well as that manager and staff is enabled to from a personal development standpoint. They're doing the best they can, right? So they're not intentionally trying to create this gap. Both groups are trying to do well, but there's just a mismatch. So experience design is really about avoiding these unintentional mismatches. Another area where this comes into play a lot is digital. It's very easy to make our reputation, our promises, our visuals, our looks look wonderful in the digital world because we have full control versus what the reality is. And I know here we talk about website versus office. This could be website versus store. This could be your business consulting website or your B2B offering and how you actually show up for those B2B customers. Are you as buttoned up as you promised? Can you actually deliver on what you promised in your digitals and on your website? So that's another place where gaps often exist. So with experience research, we're looking for those needles in a haystack, those possible single comments in our surveys that can give us not necessarily a permission slip to go make changes, but permission to go look deeper. All right. My last story, Brian. There you're up. So we'll talk about cars for a moment. So, grayscale SUVs. I love this story because it continues to ring true when I explain to folks why I do what I do and how I hope that we are able to help businesses continue to differentiate as opposed to creating a sea of sameness. So, one thing in our household, we are pretty big F1 fans. Um, I don't drive a sports car though. I drive like a 2007 Honda Pilot. So while I like the sports cars and pay attention to them, it's a little bit foreign to me. But I know enough to look at a car like this, which is a Maserati. So an MC20, as you can see there. Last I looked, I think this goes for like, I don't know, $200,000. It goes really, really fast, much faster than my Honda. And it has those kind of fancy doors, right? So all these things mean something, right? They make you feel something. They make you think of something. I'm in my daughter's carpool line in preschool a couple of years ago, and I look over and I see this, or wherever my screen is. And I was a little confused because I did like a double take. Um, Looking at the silhouette, I was just like, oh, okay, it looks like every other black, gray, and silver car in the car line, SUVs and vans. And then I saw the logo. It's a Maserati SUV. It's like, how did we get here? Like, why? And then if you kind of squint and step back and look, it's really all of them. Like, not just the sports car brands, though I would argue those are the brands that have the opportunity to say that stay the most distinct. All of them, we've just kind of converged to the norm. Now, mind you, car safety standards, road regulations, there is something in play here from an actual design standpoint, but that doesn't mean that Maserati had to make an SUV. And it also didn't mean that Lamborghini had to make an SUV, right? And so this trend of luxury brands doing what I consider playing to the middle is a really good way to illustrate why it's important to also think about the edges when we're doing experience research. Because otherwise, the simple way to have it, to say it, is we're going to have the average of the average of the average, and all the companies are going to end up in the same place, whether you're offering a service or experience. So look to the edges and think about different ways that you can bring your company promise, your company core, kind of like what makes you unique and different to life versus only focusing on things like efficiency or keeping up with the Joneses, if you will, in the business community. So no more grayscale SUVs. Instead, solve for one to help many. And this can be hard in a business setting to get folks to actually think about taking an action that won't help the majority. Because how do we get funding? How do we push things forward? How do we fund new initiatives? A lot of this really does, stem from the top. So, I mean, I will caution you if you're bringing this back to your organization, you're like, oh, wait, this is really counter against my culture. It will be an uphill battle. There's no doubt. But it's an uphill battle worth fighting because even at a small scale, even within your own department, you can do some really cool things by just thinking a little bit differently. Here's
And
three
one
examples.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to jump in real quick,
Yeah, go
Trisha.
ahead.
One thing with that last slide, I mean, because we talk about that a lot with the research plans, right? And like, hey, save some room to look at the extremes, to look at those outsides. And so recruit or talk to people that fall into the ones that you don't think will fall into the median. Even if that's not everyone you target, a handful of those interviews with customers or whatever you're going to do, right? You can learn a lot from those extremes.
Absolutely. It's so true, Brian. And even the so-called experts in the B2B space, I know it's probably a good time to bring up an example. I know, Brian, you led a workshop for one of our clients, and how we kicked that off was actually having an expert. We did a live interview, right?
hmm Yeah, and he kind of fell to the extreme, right? And when we heard from him and how they use certain tools and things, again, was not falling into that median mode chart that you had. But we learned a lot from him, and it shaped a little bit how we wanted to think about the project moving forward.
Absolutely. All right. So a couple of other ways to think about taking this to your organization. is it doesn't always have to be, you know, it can be hidden in plain sight. So this example here, if you look inside the shoes, you'll see a little whale. These were my daughter's shoes when she wasn't, she kind of knew there was left and right, but wasn't really paying attention. And the shoes, these in particular, like they weren't as curved to be able to easily tell. Like I think some of the kid brands are, these are Asics, so they're more like adult brands. But some designer was like, oh, I'm going to put a design in a place I already would put a design, but make it functional and make it help, those few kids. Maybe it was his or her kid who didn't know what shoe to go on the right foot. In a very simple, low risk way, not disrupting the majority, mind you, to solve for one, to help many. Another way to get this through in business is to think about the spinoffs. So if you're solving a very distinct, very small, air quotes, problem, it might be able to be repurposed. So this website, you can actually go check it out. It's called NASA Spinoff. The different things that are now in our society based on technology or innovations that were made for space. So it's a way to, just kind of think about specialty solutions in a different way. The last one, this is one of my favorites. There's a cool little video. We're not going to play it here, but I encourage you to go look it up if you're curious more about the story. But Zappos, they created a Zappos Adaptive. What's neat about this is how it started. So back, I guess it would be about 7 years ago now, there was a single call into their customer care center from a mom. And that mom had an adult autistic son who needed Velcro shoes. And as you grow, if Velcro shoe options become extremely limited. And she was looking for something, a little more fashionable, Nikes, Pumas, not maybe just nondescript kind of general designs. And the person taking the call went, huh, this is interesting. I wonder if there's other people like this mom and this son who could also use this. And fast forward 7 years later, it's a whole new department, website, business line for Zappos is beyond shoes. They have adaptive clothing. Puma was the original brand that they talk about in the video. They've brought on Nike. I couldn't even tell you how many brands, but a lot of the name brands are now part of this. So by listening to that single comment, ferreting out that risk and thinking through the opportunity, it wasn't like they just turned it on the next day. They created a new majority for their business with Zappos Adaptive. So the power of one call. All right, and I think that takes us into our activity map section. So Brian, I'll flip through the slides when you tell me,
Sure.
but give us an intro.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of what Trisha and I do here, part of our job is to work across the organization to bring some of the latest human-centered design approaches to projects, right? And we thought, hey, we can talk at you for this webinar, or maybe we can make this a little bit more fun and interactive and show you an activity and getting people involved as we go through. So I'm going to spend a couple slides just telling you about the activity, and then we're going to open it up and hope to have people join us to work through one of example activities that we could do to get at this. So Trisha, if you want to move forward.
There we go.
Activity maps. This is just one tool in our toolkit, right, that we could use, but we thought it was good and relevant here. And it's a way for businesses to put their kind of key strategic themes or their value props or whatever we're trying to get to and surround that with those other things that support it, reinforce it, deliver on that central strategy, right? And so what you do is you start with a handful of strategic themes, you start layering in based on those goals, right? The different supports and the connecting lines and how they overarch with each other as we go through. So this is what we're going to be working on today, and I've got a little bit more detail of why this matters on the next slide. So if we think about what makes this a great activity, one, for organizations, right, it really does show that interconnectivity of how these various activities interact within the broader themes and goals that you have. It helps you kind of visually see, right, where are things mutually exclusive? Where are they reinforcing each other as they go through? And allows you to not drift into kind of the abyss of little randomness that's not going to support the organization and their goals and what we're trying to accomplish, right? Number two, the communication strategy, right? Again, I'm going to bring up this visual piece of it. I think for many of us that have done readouts and things with management and other people, visual cues and visual ways to show things can get a lot of traction. It allows cross-functional teams to kind of get the big picture and where they may plug into that picture and where other people are playing, right? And you get to kind of see that tangible, shareable view of it. Three, the auditing and the consistency of the gaps. I kind of touched on this before, right? It does expose some of the redundancies of the misaligned activities. Are we seeing the same thing in multiple places? Are there overlaps as we're going through? Are there places that are weak links outside of where we need to adjust and maybe bring them back into play, or maybe they don't belong there as well, right? And so it lets you put a strategic lens on what we're trying to do here. And for sustaining competitive advantage, right? It reinforces the idea that the entire strategy is about that system or activities. It's not one thing driving the entire piece. There are many moving parts within that system that play a role within that strategy overall. So you're not limiting yourself. You're not pushing it there. You're really kind of protecting against that limitation and giving you guidance for what's next. That's
Absolutely.
the no more grayscales that Trisha keeps talking about.
That's right. I mean, you can go through these four with that example, right? If you're in the Maserati boardroom and you say, okay, we need to make a family hauler SUV, what activities would we have to change? Well, we have engineers who drive really fast cars or make really fast cars. We need to hire new people. It's not really a strategic fit. And is this an area we really need to go into? So these sort of filters are really helpful. All right.
Yeah.
And then Brian, you've got an example to help us bring this to life.
Yes, and then we're gonna take our turn at trying to do one. And this is a fairly famous example, if you will. There's a few versions of this for Southwest Airlines out there. Again, if you just Google activity maps and examples, this is probably one of the top ones to come up. The interesting part is it's a little older, and so you could argue that some of these have probably changed over the last 5 to 10 years, based on some of the changes that, for those of you who fly Southwest, have seen, right? But let's say if you're Southwest Airlines and your strategic position is supposed to be that fast, low-cost domestic air travel, right? What you can do is create some of the main elements, right, of what you need, which were limited passenger amenities, short haul, right, point to point kind of regional places, low ticket prices, frequent reliable departures, uh, lean, highly productive ground and gate crews, right? All things that you're hanging your hat on. And what are the supporting activities that right go, right? The the smaller white circles there as we see, 15-minute gate turnarounds. We're going to use a single aircraft type, and you can kind of start to see how they all map back to each other with these lines, right? Not everything is connected to everything, but there's usually a couple connections to some of our main pieces there as you go through. And so you start seeing that central nodes, which were, again, we came up with our strategic positions, our value propositions, those 5 things. Typically you start with between 3 to 5, and then all these spokes and nodes and connectors and how they interrelate and where are they interrelated, and seeing, again, when you go back to those 4 big things, what's how are they interdependencies, and is there any outcasts here as we go through?
Yep, that's right. And it's been
Mhm.
interesting to watch this example in the news too. So as the private equity has taken over Southwest, you've seen some of these activities go away. And like I mentioned earlier, it's not right or wrong. I hypothesize on my own editorial is it's hard to run an experience focused airline business in a very essentially commoditized industry.
Mhm.
So if you have somebody coming in and trying to save it, they're probably going to shift them more towards the service dimension. And I think that's what you're seeing, in the changes. So,
Yep.
all
And
right.
it's not just Southwest. I think you could argue for many of those kind of carriers that
Absolutely.
they've
It's
started
tough.
shifting a little bit more that way. That's where the industry is heading. So this was meant to be an example, and we thought, okay, when we do these sessions with clients, obviously we love and prefer to be there in person when we can. The world changed when COVID hit, and we've pivoted a lot and are able to do a lot of different things virtually. And so we thought, hey, let's try this out. I'm not sure we've ever done this with a webinar, so hopefully we don't fall on our face, but we'd love some interactivity from the group and the crew, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to share a mural link. We like to use mural as a way to share things. And Trisha, if you want to go to the next page, we thought, hey,
Yeah.
let's recreate this uh, for IKEA. And so if you look in the resources tab, there is a link to the mural. If you're open and willing, feel free to please join us. If you're not willing, not comfortable joining this website link, again, you do not need to sign up or have anything like that to go into this link. But if you want to still participate, the chat is opened. Feel free to throw some stuff in chat. Trisha, myself, others can probably put it onto the mural board as well. But the idea here was, hey, let's recreate this for IKEA. And again, we have a template here, and I'm going to share my screen in just a moment. But we have central nodes we can put onto this map and think through together what are some of these strategic positions or value propositions. Some speaker nodes, right, and or some of the spoken nodes. Sorry, the smaller gray ones. Where do those go? And we can even connect them. So this is kind of an all hands activity. If you're comfortable joining Mural, you want to grab some of this and do some of this with us, great. Again, we'll move it forward a little bit on our own. We'll be looking at the chat as we go through. Let me just replace this share with my own screen so I can zoom in. Okay, and I'm seeing some here, which is great. Very exciting to have some people join us. So that's awesome. For those of you that are not familiar, I tried to set this up in a way that was really user friendly. So I've got some templates here. And for Mural, the easiest way is literally just to click in and you can type something. You can click on the dot, you can pull it in, you can drag in wherever you want. Zooming in and out if you're on a desktop or on a computer. A lot of times I always tell people to zoom in and out with a little roller button on their thing, and you can kind of zoom in and out as needed. You can also use the bottom right corner here. Again, if this was a full client workshop, we'd probably do a longer tutorial, but we thought this might be just a fun way to give everyone a little bit of an idea here. So I see people in there putting stuff already. When we think about kind of our central nodes, I gave us a first start. I said the IKEA style, right? I guess you would maybe classify that as minimalist or functional style, right? And that's kind of what I was thinking there. Affordable home furnishings, I see that. Flat perch furniture, great. Is there any other central nodes? Please feel free to type in there. We've got a couple other here as we go through. If you have something to add, we'll appreciate it. If not, again, feel free to grab some of these nodes and start putting them there. We do not need to connect them yet. We just need to get them on the sheet. But let's think about IKEA. We picked IKEA because hopefully, while there's not, so many around, everyone's pretty familiar, I think, with who they are, what they bring to the table. And so we thought, hey, this might be a good, fun example to do as we go through. Um, so again, and if you want to create another one, if you run out of templates with Mural, literally you could just click on one of them. And just like if you were using a Microsoft product like a PowerPoint, you could just hit Control C and Control V, and it will duplicate that dot that you're creating and make this. So I'm seeing some great things. I see some people making some flat packaging, pleasant shopping experience, sustainable packaging. That's a great one to add there for kind of our smaller nodes. Um, I'm going to add one for I think in terms of the modular designs in general, right? I mean, they're pretty well
Yeah.
known for having those modular designs as we think through where that goes.
And I think what you mentioned earlier too, you said there's not that many of them, right? So I feel like they're very strategic in terms of how far apart they are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what we
Mm-hmm.
call that, like retail strategy, I guess. Separated retail strategy.
Yeah. I think the other thing that they really kind of promote is self-service almost, right? I mean, the way that it's set up is
Mm.
really kind of a self-service module, right? So the stores promote self-service.
And I see some folks like I see some kind of tension between do I put it in a black circle or do I put it in a gray circle? I've seen
Hmm.
some stuff go in and out, and I think that's kind of where we are in this initial phase of just getting it on there. And
Yeah.
then like y'all are doing, just rearrange it if it seems to go around one of the black kind of central nodes.
One of my favorite things to tell clients is that this kind of thing, it's messy and that's okay. It's supposed to be messy at this stage. And part of it is getting it down, right? And then we take that mess and we can organize it more. We can have, offline, activities to do. We can come back together later and organize it better. It's getting it down right now is really the most important part. So as other people think through and had things to add, again, please feel free to use the chat. If you have anything that you think should be in any of the circles, throw it in the chat if you don't want to join this, and we're happy to add it in there for you. I will keep this chat open on the right-hand side here as we go through. So just as a reminder, those black nodes, those central nodes, right? Those are the big elements that are going to draw the customer to your product or service, right? They're your value prop, they're your strategic positionings. And then the smaller ones are the things that support it, right? Supporting some of those operational things. So the in-store experience, yes, I love. We've got a food court here. Second slightly damaged goods. I didn't even know that that was a thing, but that totally makes sense. And I guess maybe I need to get to IKEA again at some time in the future to see that piece of it. Pleasant shopping experience, rooms showing. Okay. Sustainability being a piece of theirs. You're right. I definitely have seen sustainability as being a piece as we go through here.
So I guess too with I wonder how y'all would describe it, but like with the in-store experience, it's like it's guided, right? Like they basically take you on a tour through all the departments,
Mhm.
unless you cheat and you go through the registers and straight to the flat packs, which is a strategy.
It's a good point.
Make you
I'm,
browse.
we got the food court. I was gonna say, wait a second. Did no one say something about the food at IKEA? But we do. We've got the IKEA food experience, so that makes sense. It's a big selling point. Can't go to a warehouse that size and not eat while you're there for the day.
That's right. I
All
think
right.
another helpful way is, if you're going through one of these, is to say, okay, well, what is the opposite of what IKEA would do, right? To help you remind some of the things that might be distinct. So, kind of like we
Mhm.
were talking about with the sports cars earlier, like it would be really odd if IKEA started selling like top grain Italian leather furniture, right? That they had a luxury department. So we have the affordability,
Yep,
angle here, but thinking of the opposites can also be helpful.
definitely. And as you feel good, I mean, again, this is a fun make-believe activity to some degree, but feel free. Again, I put some of these lines and connectors up here. You can grab some and start making some connections. Actually gonna just create some more because we got people doing things, which is great. But
There you go.
um, so just grab some lines and you can start connecting as you want to go. And again, it's just kind of doesn't have to be pretty right now. We can take care of that later as needed, but you can connect food court to the in-store experience. You can connect whatever you think goes where it goes.
Cool. Well, while you guys play around a mural, we do want to have some Q&A. So there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom controls. So if there are any questions you would like us to address, because we'll finish up with our activity, and then we'll share our take home, our homework for you all from your experience lab session. But welcome any questions. See if I can find the Q&A. There we go. All right. Ah, that's a good one. Like maybe this person knew I was going to talk about how to run your own workshop next. 'Cause, like, how do we do this? So let me actually go ahead and pull up. It might be quicker. I can take it back down. Brian, I'm gonna
I
take
was gonna say yes,
screen
and
share.
just so everyone's aware, I will leave this link open for the next week. So if you feel like going in and playing with it and seeing an example, this will be here and open for anyone. We'll keep playing with it on the backside. Feel free to stay in. But Trisha, yes, you can go ahead and take over sharing again.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we did put together some tips for you all to create your own activity map. So you can, like Brian said, just go into that mural and like duplicate it, take off IKEA, put your own company name, and start with that. Or you could just do it on a sheet of paper or a whiteboard or a PowerPoint. There's no right or wrong, just whatever works for you. But some basic steps, start with the strategic core. Those are critical to get right. So that could definitely induce some debate. Go look at things like your mission statement, your purpose, look at taglines, look at things that are very strategic, public facing, core values. Those are a great place to look for those sort of things. Then start by adding some of the supporting activities like y'all are doing, then do the lines and just continue. Think through all the functions and departments. You know, obviously we don't work at IKEA, so I don't know what activities their accounting department does to really support this strategy, but you would think they exist, right? Or how they do logistics, how that would support. So in your own organization, think through all the different functions, some questions to pose to your coworkers, and then just review. It's a good kind of walk around visual, like Brian was saying, just to have conversations with folks, either during strategic planning or as you're thinking of a new campaign, basically becomes a filter. And do want to say out loud, since we're in the CX experience design world, this is different from a journey map. So, you know, there's lots of different types of maps. This map is more of a strategy tool. So you can definitely mention that to your colleagues as well. And if you are interested, Brian and I would love to see what you come up with for your own organization. So there'll be a leave behind in the resources, and there's also a Calendly link in the resource tab in Zoom where you found the mural link. And this will take you to the page that you could schedule time with us. We'd be happy to kind of chat through and see what ideas you have.
Mhm.
I'm going to scoot back one slide. Awesome. So it looks like we have one other question. What are some other examples of classic activity maps? Do you come across any in your research that we haven't talked about?
Um, yeah, I mean, and we can share that and follow up. I don't have any offhand just to kind of show up on screen. I will say, Google and Mural, has some good examples as we go through of other activity maps that you can do. They all at a 20,000 foot view level work in this way, but they can look and function in a little bit different way. You could go future facing, right? And instead of the experience today, maybe you want to do a map of what you want it to be in the future, and that kind of helps in the ideation side of things.
Yep. And I don't know if we mentioned, but the footnotes are in the deck. The activity map is from Michael Porter, another business school kind of professor, also a lot of Harvard articles. So it's kind of a classic example from the 90s of a strategy tool. So like Ryan said, there's a lot out there, to be able to Google it and see different examples. I guess Trader Joe's is one that comes up in the article a lot. Now that you say that, they have a very distinct operating strategy.
They do. They do.
Yep, absolutely. Great.
I
How's it
still
going in
see
the
people plugging
mural?
away at the mural again. It'll keep being open. We appreciate you working through this with us, and it's always a fun way to keep people engaged. When you're in person, I'm a big fan of sugaring people up, feeding them, giving them lots of candy and cookies. But when you're virtual, there's other ways to do it, such as this, and getting them active and engaged and collaborating together.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered all the questions unless anybody has anything else they want to drop in the chat, but we're super excited you were able to join us for the first installment of the Experience Lab, but you can look for more of these to come from our team throughout the year. We'll be doing some fun stuff. You might have saw, if you don't follow KS&R on LinkedIn, go give us a check out. There's a post about a Lego workshop that Brian and I and our team hosted with the KS&R crew. So we'll be doing actually a webinar on that. That one might not be till January though. I think before that we have a product development, which is pretty cool. So
And that one will be bring your own Legos, but if we can come give you Legos, we'd love to do it in person and bring some Legos with us.
That is correct. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks everyone. The recording will be shared. So if you need this for reference, but if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Have a good day.